A Hollywood Hills mansion suddenly abandoned, a Tesla trunk hiding something no one was supposed to find, and a rising R&B star accused of fleeing as the evidence closes in. This isn't just another celebrity controversy, it's a story of power, silence, and clues hidden in plain sight. You're watching Fame Insight, the channel that exposes the truth behind fame. Make sure you subscribe now because what we uncovered in this case will keep you watching until the very end. It began with a car that seemed like nothing more than another abandoned luxury vehicle in Los Angeles, a sleek Tesla, left sitting in a tow yard in the Hollywood Hills. In a city where expensive cars get dumped all the time, no one thought much of it at first. But then came the smell, a foul odor seeping from the trunk, so strong it forced workers to take a closer look. When investigators finally pried it open, what they found inside would stop them in their tracks. A sealed bag, and inside that bag the partial remains of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Only a head and torso. No one could believe it. The coroner confirmed the identity. The missing posters that had been scattered across Los Angeles were no longer of a girl who might return home. They were now the face of a victim whose story had ended in the worst possible way. For her family, the nightmare they had feared had just become reality. For investigators, the discovery raised a new and even more terrifying question. How did a missing child end up hidden inside the car of a rising R&B star? And while that discovery was horrifying enough, it was only the beginning, because once people started digging into Celeste's life, the connections they uncovered were far darker than anyone expected. Before her name was tied to headlines and hashtags, Celeste Rivas Hernandez was simply a young teenager trying to find her place in the world. Friends described her as bubbly, curious, and obsessed with Hello Kitty. She wore the character on her sandals, her sweaters, even her notebooks. To anyone else, she looked like a normal kid with a quirky obsession. But behind that smile was a girl who often felt out of place. She wanted more than the small world she lived in. She wanted to belong, to be seen, to feel older than she was. And like so many kids her age, she turned to social media for that validation. Celeste ran away more than once. Each time, police labeled her as another restless teenager rebelling against her parents. They treated her as a runaway, not a victim. But to her family and classmates, her disappearances were a warning. Something or someone kept pulling her away from home. Her teacher remembered her coming back to school after one disappearance, telling friends she had been living with someone in Los Angeles. Classmates whispered that it wasn't just a friend, it was someone older, someone she called a boyfriend. Still, no one stepped in, no case was opened, no real investigation was launched. The system failed her again and again, and that failure gave space for something unthinkable to happen. Celeste's life becoming entwined with an older rising star in the music industry. And the proof of that connection wasn't buried in rumors. It was sitting online, in screenshots, messages, and photos that would soon spread across the internet like wildfire. It didn't take long for the internet to uncover what investigators hadn't. As soon as Celeste's name hit the headlines, old screenshots began circulating. At first, people questioned if they were real, but the more they spread, the harder they became to ignore. One of the most disturbing screenshots showed David himself bragging in a Discord chat. He claimed, "Megan deleted user got a kid on the way." The username linked back to Celeste. Another post from Celeste showed a photo of her hand with his name tattooed inside her ring finger. Not long after, a picture appeared of a man's hand, wearing a bracelet, in a hug. Compared side by side with David's own photos, the resemblance was impossible to miss. What shocked people most wasn't just the content, but the timing. These conversations and photos were dated July 2024, 3 months after Celeste had already been reported missing. Was she alive and still in contact with him? Was someone else running her account to cover their tracks? Or was David deliberately leaving digital breadcrumbs, knowing fans would eventually find them? Whatever the truth was, these leaks pulled David straight into the center of the investigation. Suddenly, it wasn't just rumors. It was proof that Celeste's story and David's life were tangled together in ways no one wanted to admit. And just when the screenshots made the case look impossible to deny, a teacher stepped forward, with a first-hand account that made the entire story feel even darker. The case already felt disturbing, but when a teacher came forward, everything became far too real. In a video that spread quickly online, the teacher said they froze when they saw Celeste's photo on the news. The face staring back at them wasn't just another headline. It was a student they remembered teaching, sitting right in their classroom not long before she vanished. They recalled Celeste being different from the other kids. She was energetic, friendly, but she carried herself with secrets. Classmates remembered her talking about knowing a rapper, hinting that she was living a life outside of school, a life that didn't make sense for someone her age. And the timeline matched. The teacher remembered how Celeste disappeared once, only to be found and brought back by police. When she returned, she confided in friends that she had been with a rapper in Los Angeles. That rapper, as we now know, was David. Not long after, she disappeared again, and this time, she never came back. Hearing it from a teacher, someone who had seen her in person, who had watched her walk into class and then vanish, made the entire story hit harder. It wasn't just rumors online, it was real. But the most chilling part, while teachers, friends, and family struggled to raise alarms, David himself seemed to be leaving his own trail of evidence, hidden in plain sight, inside his music. If the screenshots were disturbing, what people uncovered in David's own music was even harder to ignore, because buried inside his songs and performances were chilling lines and images that now seemed less like art and more like confessions. In one track, David sang about someone wanting to be with their mom and sister again. At first, fans thought it was just emotional songwriting, but once Celeste's story came out, that lyric felt eerily personal. Celeste had often told friends she missed her family when she was away. Another song carried an even darker line. In the back of my mind, I blanked you, and I didn't even regret it. Some defended it as metaphor, killing old habits, moving on from a past self, but others argued it sounded far too much like a confession hidden in plain sight. And then came the Hello Kitty connection. Celeste was obsessed with Hello Kitty, always wearing her themed sandals and sweaters. Yet in David's posts, fans noticed he kept slipping in references to the character. In one post, he even joked about that one Hello Kitty girl you met in 2021. To outsiders, it seemed harmless, but to people who knew Celeste's obsession, it felt like a direct link. Even his performances started to look suspicious. On stage, David was known for staging strange mock funerals. Fans once thought it was just edgy art. Now, it felt like mocking, as if he was taunting the very people who didn't stop him. And in one 2025 music video, he took it even further, showing the act of placing a body into a trunk. At the time, viewers shrugged it off as a dramatic metaphor. But after Celeste's remains were discovered inside his Tesla, it hit differently, much differently. These patterns in his art left fans divided. Was David foreshadowing? Was he confessing? Or was he daring people to notice? If you're still watching, you're tuned in to Fame Insight, where we dig deeper than anyone else dares. Hit subscribe now, because the next piece of this story makes everything even more unsettling. Because while David's music may have carried hidden meanings, the most damning clues weren't in the songs at all. They were buried inside his online world, a Discord server where everything changed. If David's music raised questions, his online life raised alarms. Away from the stage lights and glossy Instagram posts, there was a secret corner of the internet where fans say he acted very differently. For years, David ran a Discord server, a place where his most loyal followers gathered. On the surface, it looked like any other fan community. Memes, late-night chats, people bonding over music. But according to those who were there, it was something much darker. Moderators who later came forward claimed they saw things they couldn't ignore: inappropriate conversations, private messages with girls who were clearly underage, and discussions that crossed every possible line. And the most disturbing part? David himself was in those chats, fully aware of who he was talking to. When members tried to speak out, they weren't just ignored, they were silenced. Users were muted, banned, even threatened. One person said they were muted for an entire month, simply for warning others that Celeste was in danger. And it wasn't just her. Former members whispered that Celeste wasn't the only one, that other young fans had been pulled into the same cycle. Some even claimed half of the people David spoke to privately were underage. The most chilling detail of all, Celeste first connected with David in this exact way. Not at a show, not in the industry, but online, through Fortnite, then Discord, then private chats that led to real-life meetings. For investigators, that server became a digital crime scene. For the public, it became the clearest sign yet that the warnings were always there. But no one listened until it was too late. And when screenshots and recordings from inside that server began leaking online, the case didn't just deepen, it exploded. The whispers inside David's Discord could have stayed hidden forever, but then the leaks began. First, screenshots, then entire screen recordings. Suddenly, the world was seeing what had been buried in private chats for years. These weren't vague hints or secondhand rumors. They were direct messages tied back to David's own account. Mentions of Celeste. Conversations that blurred the line between fan interaction and manipulation. Jokes that once the news broke, no one found funny anymore. And then Celeste's brother spoke out. He confirmed what many feared. His family had gone to the police more than once. They reported her missing. They explained their suspicions. But every time they were brushed off. To authorities, it looked like a runaway problem. To her family, it was a life or death situation. Once the leaks hit Twitter and Reddit, public outrage erupted. Fans flooded timelines with anger, asking how something this obvious could have been ignored for so long. Comparisons to other celebrities accused of dark behavior spread quickly. People questioned whether David was being protected by his fame, just like other stars before him. The anger wasn't just aimed at him, it was aimed at the system. the police who didn't act, the industry that kept him touring, the moderators who silenced warnings instead of listening. For the first time, David's career looked like it was collapsing in real time. But if the leaks exposed the truth, they also revealed something even more unsettling: a circle of people around David who may have known far more than they ever admitted. As the leaks spread, one thing became clear: David wasn't the only one who knew what was happening. Mentions of a mysterious figure named Gus began surfacing in conversations. Some said he was close to David, someone who had seen everything. Others believed he played a role in keeping people quiet. What exactly he knew, or what he did, is still unclear, but his name kept appearing in places it didn't belong. Then came the stories from David's former friends and associates. They admitted they had seen things: messages, photos, interactions with girls who were clearly too young. But instead of stepping forward, they stayed silent. Why? Some feared retaliation. Others didn't want to ruin their own chances in the industry by going up against a rising star. The result was a wall of silence, a protective shield that allowed everything to continue unchecked. And within that silence, Celeste wasn't the only victim people began to worry about. Whispers spread that there were others, other stories, other names that never made the headlines. Suddenly, this no longer looked like one tragedy. It began to feel like part of a much bigger, much darker pattern. And when fans pieced together Celeste's last online activity, the timeline of her disappearance raised questions that made everything even more chilling. When investigators and fans started comparing Celeste's online activity with the dates surrounding her disappearance, the case became even more confusing and even darker. Her last verified Instagram likes came in December 2024. After that, silence. No likes, no comments, no messages. It was as if she vanished from the digital world all at once. This detail shifted everything. If her body wasn't discovered until months later, how long had she truly been gone? Some believe Celeste may have been gone since January 2025, long before the Tesla was even towed away. But the mystery didn't end there. Soon after her disappearance, a fake Celeste account appeared online. It posted photos, left comments, and tried to make it seem like she was still around. The account fooled some people at first, but others believed it was a cover-up. Was it David himself, keeping her alive digitally to buy time? Was it a fan trying to keep her memory alive? Or was it someone in his circle, deliberately trying to mislead investigators? To many, the timeline didn't just raise suspicions, it suggested planning. Someone wanted Celeste's presence to continue online even after she was gone. And that's what makes this part of the story so terrifying. But while people argued over the timeline, David's real-world behavior told a different story, one that played out on stage in front of thousands of fans. While investigators pieced together Celeste's timeline, David himself was stepping on stage, and what he chose to perform only made suspicions worse. At several shows, David staged bizarre scenes that looked less like concerts and more like funerals, coffins, mourning imagery, entire sets designed around death. At the time, some fans thought it was strange but artistic. After Celeste's remains were discovered, those performances felt like something far more sinister. And then came the music videos. In one, a body is placed in a trunk. Audiences once shrugged it off as symbolism, an edgy metaphor. But after Celeste was found inside the trunk of his Tesla, that video became impossible to look at the same way. Was it foreshadowing? Was it mockery? Or was it his way of showing the truth without ever saying it? To many, it felt like David wasn't just performing, he was taunting. And while his performances raised disturbing questions, his actions offstage were even harder to ignore, especially when police raided his Hollywood Hills home. If David's music felt like a confession, his real-life behavior made him look like a man on the run. Just days after Celeste's remains were discovered, police raided David's $20,000 a month Hollywood Hills mansion. Neighbors watched as officers swarmed the property, hauling away bags of evidence and seizing electronics, including a laptop investigators said could hold crucial answers. And then suddenly, David was gone. The homeowner later confirmed that David had abruptly broken his lease. Moving trucks were spotted outside, loading up his belongings along with those of his tour manager. By the time the dust settled, the mansion sat empty. To fans, it looked like a cover-up. Why walk away from a multi-million-dollar home overnight if you had nothing to hide? Why flee just as investigators closed in? Meanwhile, the LAPD remained tight-lipped, calling the case ongoing, while refusing to confirm whether charges were imminent. The silence only fueled speculation that David wasn't cooperating. He was escaping. And as the mansion sat empty, one question haunted fans, investigators, and Celeste's family alike. Was this the final chapter? Or just the beginning of a story even darker than anyone imagined? Celeste's story is more than a headline. It's the story of a young girl overlooked by systems that should have protected her, pulled into a cycle of disappearances that too many people ignored. At the center stands David, a rising star whose music, online life, and real-world actions now seem impossible to separate from the tragedy. Were his lyrics confessions? Were his performances taunts? Or was the truth hidden behind the silence of those who stood by and did nothing? Even now, the case feels unfinished. Investigators are still piecing together evidence, friends and family are still demanding answers, and fans are still left wondering just how deep this story really goes. Because if Celeste's tragedy proves anything, it's this. In the world of fame, what happens in the shadows always finds its way to the spotlight. You've been watching Fame Insight, where we uncover the stories others won't touch. If you want the truth, not the polished version, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and join us for the next chapter, because this story, it's far from over.